Welcome everybody to our second talk. Thank you guys who came this morning and have stuck around. So we're just gonna get into it. For those of you who are not here this morning, my name is Seth. I am ex-ambassadors manager and co-founder of Cayuga Sound with
no last name required.
Seth Kallen. My name is Seth.
I love it, dude.
We're going to start by just introducing everybody. So we'll start with Dan Smalls here, who runs DSP Shows here in Ithaca, co-founder of Cayuga Sound, and the man who makes this all possible. And then next, I know you all know who he is. This is Sam Harris from ex-ambassadors, hailing from Ithaca, New York.
That's right.
And we've got Casey Harris here also. So we'll just start off by saying thank you all for being at this festival, for taking part in the external activities we're doing. A big part of what we wanted to do with Cayuga Sound was not just have a big concert, but give something back, teach some things, have some fun. So amazing that you all came here and are being a part of this. So for the next...
Thank you guys. Seriously.
Yeah. Really.
So
give yourselves a round.
Yeah, give yourselves a round. So for the next hour or so, we're gonna kind of go through ex-ambassador's story from Ithaca to the Billboard Charts, and with slideshow and photos included. And then towards the end, we'll open this up for Q&A with all of you guys. But let's just get started. So
it was a dark and stormy night.
It was a dark and stormy night. So we got some Viking photos going on.
Nice. Ooh, I like that one.
I'm not in any of these. What's going on?
I know, damn right.
All right, so
Casey, it's very flattering pictures of us as little babies.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Margaret.
As long as they're flattering, that's what counts. Yeah.
So, guys, why don't you just start off by talking about growing up in Ithaca as little kids and what got you both into music and how it all started?
Well, here's a dirty secret about these two photos. These were not taken in Ithaca. These were taken in Seattle right before we moved to Ithaca. But very, very nice. Nice, good try. Growing up in Ithaca was amazing. I mean, there's no place like this town. And we've been all over the world now, and I can safely say that. For us, I think it was most important to grow up in an environment where there's so much diversity in this town, and so much enthusiasm for the arts and for creativity, and we grew up always being encouraged to just do our thing and be as out there and weird as we wanted to, and this town really supports that. They really do. Nothing's changed. I know, and I love it. So that was I think the biggest thing for us. And a part of what I love about this city is that because it is a college town, and we're lucky to have the colleges here because this upstate New York is there are a lot of cities in upstate New York that are not doing so well economically, and the colleges have given this city a lot of life, a lot of character. But there are people from all walks of life who live here, and to be able to really experience that as a kid was invaluable to us. I think I can safely say.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Because it is, especially for for this area of the country, it is the most diverse small town. At least for miles and miles around. I would argue probably the most diverse small town in, at least in Northeast America, if not in all of America. And it's also, like Sam was saying, it's a town where you're encouraged to sort of let your free flag fly, which I always kind of appreciated.
So
And
guys,
you're a freaky guy.
That's right. Well, you know what I terrify myself sometimes.
tell us about your first band, the Fuzz Brothers, which we
Do we have to?
we pulled up artwork.
So we started this band in high school. Oh man, we I think played this. This is from our first official album that we self-recorded and self-released. I think it was the year we graduated high school, and then I went off to college. Casey was already at that point at piano tuning school in Washington State, and then the next summer we came back home and did an album release party at Castaways.
Oh yeah.
And I remember it was so cool to have our face on the cover of the Ithaca Journal. Thank you, Jim. That was like the coolest thing ever for us at the time. And there were many iterations of this band. I first started playing in bands here in Ithaca when I was in 6th grade at our Boynton Middle School talent show. Oh yeah, that's another crate.
Was that from the Boynton Middle School talent show?
No, this is just another flyer. 13.
And the
Oh my God.
bottom left there.
Oh wow. Yeah, totally. A lot of memories of playing in playing wherever and whenever we could in all ages venues. There used to be an internet cafe called WowNet. You guys remember WowNet? Any Ithacans here? Yeah. So we played so many shows at WowNet. That was like back in middle school and early days of high school. And Lost Dog Cafe, which is now the Lot, right? Lot 10. R.I.P. Lost Dog. I really love that place.
It lives on.
But yeah, I mean, we were just really trying. I mean, there at the time there weren't really many alternative rock bands playing in Ithaca, or many rock bands in general. So we just took it upon ourselves to try and like make something happen and book our own shows and it kind of works. It kind of works while we're here.
So speaking of, I just want to read something real quick. This is post Fuzz Brothers. They changed their name. I don't know why, but I could take plenty of guesses. They were called the Fuzz Brothers. But
What did we change it to?
yeah, so they changed their name to Ambassadors. And I just want to read an email from October 14th, 2010. Hey Dan.
Oh my God.
My name is Paul. I represent a band from Brooklyn. This is great. I represent a band from Brooklyn called Ambassadors. I saw that you don't have an opening act listed for the Josh Ritter show on October 24th. Mind you, that was
Can
1
I read
week
this
later.
before you say how I responded, please?
What's that?
Can I read it before you say how I responded?
I don't have the response screenshot. I think my band. Okay, so you still don't have an opening act listed for the Josh Ritter show on October 24th.
Yeah.
I think my band would be a perfect addition to the bill. These guys are all originally from Ithaca, New York. 3 of the members were in a band called the Fuzz Brothers before forming Ambassadors, and they have played multiple times at the Haunt, Castaways, the State, and pretty much every other venue in town.
That's a good sell. That's a very good sell.
They could guarantee a draw of at least 40 or 50 people. If not more, to the show. And sonically, Ambassadors would be a perfect complement to Josh Ritter's sound. Let me know if this sounds good to you. I'd love to get the ball rolling on this as soon as possible. Best, Paul Lewis.
This Paul Lewis guy's a very thorough manager.
There was no Paul Lewis. That was a young Sam Harris pretending to be a manager and hustling his way at the shows.
Long live Paul Lewis.
So Dan, you probably turned them down a couple times. Dan, why don't you talk about when you first started having these guys play?
It's okay. I think Paul came off as a little overeager.
I remember, I actually
Played his
did
numbers a little bit too, you know.
Also, by the way, Dan, when I told this to Dan, when Dan sent this to me yesterday, he didn't realize until yesterday that there was no apology.
Two things I will say. Yes, I did not know because that's an email that I still get 25 times a day. Literally. And like, I'm the guy who tries to respond to everyone. I try to be fair. My partner sometimes tells me I'm crazy, but I try to respond to everybody and say, listen, you know, we'll do the best we can, but it's really hard to have bands like that come. The Ithaca Connection, I responded. I remember that I said, there was more to that email. They didn't just ask about Josh Ritter. In the same email, they asked about Neon Indian. Now, if you know who that band is, there were some, you know, they're one of the early knob-turning sort of DJ bands that had Josh Ritter, a singer-songwriter on one side and this on the other. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, but we'll talk about it.
We were just desperately trying to get any shows that we possibly could.
But he said the right things as a fake manager that we're from Ithaca, and I remembered the Fuzz Brothers, so I'm like, oh yeah. So, you know, he said the right things. Drawing 50 people to me means 5. Because most bands do that to the power of 10.
Exactly.
Sometimes you do it to the power of -10.
Oh yeah.
So nothing against them, but in the early days they couldn't draw flies, so that's okay. Their parents came to shows, and that was the way it works. But, there was always something though. That when you go back to that list of shows, that Ambassador show, I remember that distinctly. I was sort of just getting on my.
That was at the Haunt, right?
It was, yeah. You know, 2013 was probably my 4th or 5th year on my own, and I don't know how much people know my history, but I worked for other promoters before I came back here. I went to Cornell in 1988, graduated in 92. I stayed around the Haunt for a couple of years when I was supposed to go work for Bill Graham, and he died, but I don't want to get into all this stuff. But I left Ithaca for a while, and it seemed that there was a scene when I was in school, you know, and to talk about the history of Ithaca, the Haunt, John Peterson is a legend. And I tried to get him to come here and sit with us today, and it didn't happen, but he was the guy that put this town on the map in a lot of ways, you know. And when I was this 20-year-old kid, he was letting me book bands that nobody ever heard of, like Soundgarden and Soul Asylum, and this band called Pearl Jam that 40 people came to see at the Haunt. Literally, and their record was out. So this town was on the way up, and you know, as any 21-year-old kid, I was too smart, and I moved to New York and worked for a record label and hated it. So I should have probably stayed, but the years away from Ithaca really, you know, saw that John retired and there wasn't really a scene for a while. And when I came back, I was out of the music business. I'd done other things and other promoters, and I didn't really want to get back into it, but somehow I wound up helping with the State Theater, and next thing you know, I've got a company in town. And I wanted to do it different than these people I worked with. I know it's a long-winded story, but to come around, I wanted to do it differently than other promoters and actually respond to guys like, you know, fake manager and Paul, you know. And I responded, and I, you know, in the end I said I'll look into it, and it didn't happen. But you know, then they signed with an agent, and you know, Ambassadors played. We tried some shows. Okay, I mean, but
It did all right.
But I believed in this guy and the band at the time, because there was a talent level and there was a stick-to-itiveness in the songs they wrote, you know. And I don't want to sell anybody down the river, but there's a lot of bands today that are making it on other reasons. You leave a show and you're not humming a song. But I remember being at that show and leaving there, singing one of their songs the next morning, going, wow, that shit doesn't happen very often. And that was really early on, you know. So I give you guys credit for that. And when you know, I talked about this in the earlier panel, but the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, you guys put 10,000 hours in, especially as Paul Lewis, so you can't say they were all as yourself, but you put the time into this, and that's the basis that had to happen, you know. So that's why we've been so excited about this whole festival.
Yeah.
And let me just say, for those of you who you're all here in town, either visiting or live here for Cayuga Sound, so you know, there's 2 events happening tonight at the Haunt and the Dock, which the Dock was Castaways, but you know, one is sold out over at the Haunt, but Ithaca Underground is hosting a show at the Dock that you should all get down to. It's cheap to get in, and there's probably some fake Paul Lewises in the crowd.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of amazing artists playing that, you know, could be hosting their own festival here in Ithaca in the next few years. So highly recommend getting over there. But let's so now let's talk about, you know, you guys were here in Ithaca, you moved to New York, you know, put out your first EP. So talk about the early days of doing it on your own.
It sort of seemed to be the trend, though. Is you grew up in Ithaca and you moved to New York City, and then you know, after a while, you sort of, you know, come back to visit. You know,
Yeah.
I find it's pretty amazing here. That's crazy.
It really is. It's always just. I mean, the you know, the longer we spent away from town, the more incredible it is every time we come back. But yeah, when we moved to New York, we, you know, again, we struggled to kind of find our place here in the music scene that existed here in Ithaca while we were here. And then we moved to New York, and we're like, oh, you know, there are gonna be so many rock bands. We're gonna find people. We're gonna like really like find a scene there, and that never happened. We really didn't. We like found zero. At the time, you know, we were living in Brooklyn. We were playing wherever we could. Still playing this kind of this alternative rock that was more pop leaning, and you know, we had choruses and we had catchy hooks. And at the time, the music that was really exploding out of New York was a really experimental indie rock coming from Brooklyn.
We didn't tape the keys of our keyboards down.
No, we
other bands that
didn't
played with.
do like any weird experimental stuff. We really tried to no avail. But you know, it was the same thing. You know, but we kept going. You know, even though we didn't find our niche, didn't find like a bunch of bands that sounded like us and played the same type of music and would book us on their shows and we booked them on our shows. Like that didn't really happen for us in New York, but we played anyways, and we played it wherever and whenever we could. And that was, you know, that was how we operated for a very, very, very long time.
We traveled like on the subway with our gear for a long time.
Yeah, we've been a band, so just to give you some perspective, I think we've been a band for a little over 10 years now, like officially a band, with our lineup, and we probably spent the first six years or 7 years of those times as a band, doing exactly what I was just saying, struggling, playing, you know, whatever shows we could, literally passing around the tip jar for money at the end of the night, or playing free shows just so that we could convince our friends to come out and get some people to hear us.
Yeah.
We did that for a very long time until we met this handsome gentleman over here to our left. And then it was very still
And everything
struggling.
became easy.
It's all clouds and flowers then.
And so, you know, because we have limited time, I'll kind of roll through some of the story a bit. So, you know, you guys moved to New York and play around, you know, play gigs anywhere you can in Brooklyn and the city, and then, you know, at some point you signed to Interscope Records. So, you know, I think many people think you sign to a big record label and suddenly everything is easy and everything works out. So why don't you talk about, you know, you moved from Ithaca to New York, sign a major label deal, but then what?
Casey, you remember where we were when we signed that contract?
Yeah, I mean, we were in the venue we played many times, the Brillo Box, and actually in Pittsburgh, not even in New York. So even before we'd signed, we'd been touring for a while. We bought an old 15-passenger van, and we beat that thing into the ground. It was done. We literally drove it to the point where it would not run anymore. And there was a part of, I'd say it was several months actually, where we were touring, where we would plan in every day as part of the day's schedule, taking the van to a repair place. That's the thing.
True story.
You know, that would be part of the morning routine. Drop us off at the venue, and then, you know, Gabe usually would take the van to the repair place, you know, while we were all setting up the gear at the venue. And sometimes
This is all very real.
Yeah.
And it's giving me a little PTSD actually.
you know, sometimes we had one of the wheels of the trailer almost come off. It was, you know,
One time we're driving down the Jersey Turnpike, and I'm driving, and I look in the rearview mirror, and there's fire coming from the back of our trailer tire. Yeah, you know, so
good times,
once we signed with Interscope, I mean, we were in the back of this amazing venue, but it's very dingy, and
it was a venue where you had to carry your amps up a steep, narrow flight of stairs.
It was like January or February, so it was cold, it was miserable outside. We just we just played a show. I think, you know, I'll be as diplomatic as I can here. When you sign to a major label as a young band, it's a very stressful situation for many reasons, and so none of us were like in a good mood. But it was.
You really wanted to be there.
We really tried. We were like, okay, let's be happy. We just signed a deal. Let's be happy. And and for the first couple of years that we were signed, it was talking about the van. it was so surreal for us because we, one of the first big things that happened was we got an opportunity to open for Imagine Dragons while we were, and go out on tour with them.
It was their first like arena tour, wasn't it?
It was an arena,
Oh,
it was like amphitheaters,
right?
and they kind of co-signed us to Interscope. So we went out on tour with them, and they had 2 tour buses, they had 3 semi-trucks, and we loaded into these big venues, and we would be there with a van and a U-Haul trailer and pull up next to these big tour buses.
Hi guys, here we are.
Yeah, and we'd come out on stage, you know, we because we're the opening act, our stuff would already be on stage set up, so we'd walk out and we'd feel like rock stars and we'd play the show, you know, to a crowd, to a huge crowd, you know, and for us that was it, that was like so amazing, you know, meanwhile most people in the crowd are like, who are these guys? When is Imagine Dragons coming out? And then we finish and have to scramble and like unplug cables and like carry our gear off, and like I'm sweating. Casey's like, where is everyone? What's on stage?
We're all up on stage.
Where do I
this whole
go?
time. So the audience is watching us do this the whole time. This is like 20,000, no, maybe not that big, but you know, 8,000 people watching us wind up our cords frantically, trying to pack the keyboards into cases, you know.
Usually we would have to put Sam and Casey in a separate room after the
Oh my
show because I thought Casey was going to murder Sam.
Oh my God. We would just be, I mean, it was so funny because you go from playing this show and like, we're putting on our show, we brought our energy and like, it's like, thank you so much, good night.
Okay guys, let's go.
Just immediately it switches to that.
And of course, you know, you have, I mean, their crew was amazing. It wasn't ever like they were yelling at us or anything, but they were there, you know, moving their Imagine Dragons gear on stage while we're, you know, frantically trying to pack up and get off. It was chaos.
Yeah,
it was absolute chaos. But it was so.
What'd you get, 20
So
minutes,
awesome.
25?
25 minutes.
25
And
minutes.
even before that, here's a whole this was like the big deal. We announced, I think, the first ever fall headline tour or something. And it was all these, or maybe not even, maybe, oh no, some of these are with Local H.
Local age. And this is definitely not a
Yeah, sorry, no, this was opening.
It's not
fully opening
at all, is it?
Let's say you guys, you know, tour, you sign to Interscope, you meet this guy, Alex the Kid, who you've worked closely with, making music, and then, you know, you start putting out these EPs. And talk about, you know, the EPs and how they came together and how you kind of went to chapter 2.
The first EP was called Love Songs, Drug Songs, and it had 5 or 6, thank you. That was about the approximate to what the rest of the world thought it was. We were so proud of it. We worked really hard on it, though, and we really loved that thing. But, you know, it was the first thing we had released, and no one really knew who we were, so it didn't really do much. And, you know, we thought maybe our first single, Unconsolable, from it was going to go to radio. That didn't end up happening. And so we were like, all right, well, we'll do what we know how to do, and we'll just keep touring. Kept playing shows and kept doing that same old grind that we had started getting more and more used to, and starting to really see tangible results from that, from getting in front of people and playing music. So we kept doing that, and then we put a second EP out. This time we had a song on it called Jungle that we wrote with a guy named Jamie and Commons, also produced by Alex the Kid. That song got placed in this big campaign for Beats by Dre headphones.
That's what's up on the screen.
For the World Cup. Okay, yeah, that's me. Beats headphones. So it was incredible when that happened. And then on top of that, Jay-Z gets on a remix for it.
Yeah.
So like all of this is happening all at once, and it's so incredible. And we go out on tour with the Imagine Dragons, and we're on this tour, and we're just like, we're thinking, all right, like this is it. This is like, all right, it's happening. Like, get ready. And nothing really happens after that. Jungle never really made it to radio. I mean, you hear it every once in a while on the radio, but it didn't become like a big radio hit.
Yeah, I mean, Jungle sort of opened the door and put you on the map, and it sold a lot of singles, and people know the song, but from the band's perspective, it was not that much has changed. Maybe it feels like a few more people know about us, and then
Unsteady was also on that EP too, which is you know, something to just remember for later.
and then this happens, and this is probably what 9 months later?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, what happened was Jungle kind of does its thing, and we're waiting for the label to tell us what single they're going to try to push to radio next. And we get a call, I remember we're backstage, and I get a call, I think from you, Seth, and Seth had just got off the phone with the record label, and they're like, they're not going to push another single from this EP. And we're like, fuck. Okay, what do we do now? And so, again, we just kept touring, kept playing shows, and kept writing.
Yeah.
You know, I will say, so Alex, our producer on that, he really instilled this in me to just always be creating on the road and wherever I could. And we got to a point where we did that second EP while we were on tour. We didn't enter a studio once for that whole EP. It was all just stuff that we did on our laptops and like recorded vocals backstage in bathrooms and in hotel rooms and in our van. The vocals for Jungle were recorded at my fiance's kitchen table in her apartment in New York, where I was staying because I had to sublet my apartment to live. Because I couldn't afford to stay in my own apartment. So we kept writing and finally stumbled upon Renegades. And I say stumbled upon because that's just how these things happen.
It was the
You know,
last song we wrote for the album. I mean, we were almost not.
Well, yeah, we didn't know if we were going to put a record out at all, an album.
Yeah.
So, but until we wrote that song and until it got placed in the Jeep campaign, and then that took off, and it did what it did, and allowed us to put a record out, and allowed us to go on our first real. Well, no, we had gone on our first headline run when Jungle came out. And then we did our second one after Renegades came out when we put the full record out.
And after Renegades, it was, oh my God, we had the tour bus, and oh my God, it's not just Gabe.
Well, the tour bus even took a while. I mean, look, we put Renegades out. We were still in that church van. We bought this church van. All right, just rewind.
Because we'd driven the other van to the ground at this
Well,
point.
this would be our third van.
Yeah.
And this church van that we got in Brooklyn, it still had praying hands on it, and it said Greater Refuge Ministries all over it.
And there's a phone number on the side too.
Yeah, it also said church van on it.
Yeah.
The strategy was, if you have a church van, who would dare break into it and steal your
No one's gonna pull you over.
Now,
Yeah.
look at the management right there. Keep them in a van as long as you can.
But yeah, and then things started to really pick up, and we were able to, and I think all those times where we had to keep just playing, had to like kind of start over and go back to like what we knew how to do, playing shit, which was playing shows and touring. That really was the reason why we were able to continue after Renegades came out now, and why it wasn't just a flash in the pan. I think because once we had some eyes on us, we had already gotten to a point where we had played so many shows and had really honed our craft, so we were ready when it happened. I mean, you're never really ready, but we were ready enough.
So here's just some highlights from touring, touring the world with the Dragons and Jimmy Eat World and Panic at the Disco and headlining and Muse and festivals, and there have been some just really remarkable moments. And then,
Leaving out so many of the
and then that gets us to, and that brings us to Ithaca, so this festival. So Dan, why don't you first talk a little bit about how we got here and between then and now.
Yeah. Well, I think it started when you and I talked about doing the festival almost before that benefit. I think the conversation started with, hey, let's do something in Ithaca to come back. And at the same time, it's not very public, I don't think, but DSP does all the shows at the State Theater that have our name on them, but we also book all the shows for the theater itself, the not-for-profit stuff, the family stuff, and their benefit and gala shows. So we were having trouble that year finding one, and you called me and it was just like, hey, what do we do? Why don't we do this for the theater? It would be a great return to home. We're going to sell this thing out. You were worried. These guys were worried. Should we do it? Should we not do it?
Mind you, the band had always said, we had been offered various shows in Ithaca, come play a park somewhere, or do this or this, and Sam specifically said to me, I do not want to go back to Ithaca until we can headline the State Theater, because we haven't played there since high school.
I think I said until we can sell out.
Until we can sell it out, and then you know, I was like, guys, it's going to be the closing night of the tour, and they were like, we can't, I don't know, and it.
I sort of twisted his arm and said that the gala thing will help a lot, and it didn't need it. I mean, when we put that on sale, we sold out in 3 days. You know, and most of the tickets were the first day. We just pushed the singles after that, and it was a great thing. We raised some money for the theater. You know, you guys came in for less than your normal fee at that point, which was really nice, and the State Theater benefited tremendously from that. You know, that's a not-for-profit. It can only live so long on how many shows we pay them rent. You know, it needs events like this to happen.
And that show raised $25,000?
In that neighborhood, yeah, between sponsors and ticket sales and stuff. So that was a wonderful thing, and it showed in me. I mean, that was where we connected, I think, in the first place, of seeing why you guys were in this game. You know, it's not just about the music. There's a heart behind it. And Seth and I were like, okay, let's bring them back in September and knock this thing out. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. We were talking to Cornell about doing something on campus, and it was moving so fast.
Oh, last September.
And you know, and the amount of work that my team and I and everyone, you know, people in this room have done. Thank God we didn't try to do this right after, because it only was 3 months. A year ago yesterday, Seth and Lauren came up here for a weekend, and the culmination was we took a ride out to the Seneca Lake wine country and stopped at Danio's and had a beautiful lunch.
Now you get it.
And smoked meats and amazing food and drinks, and at that table we decided that we were going to do this September. And a year to the date, literally, last night, we all met out there and had dinner as a group and kicked this thing off and got ready to give you what we're going to give you over the next few days. And it's, you know, to me, my history, you know, before I came back to Ithaca, I was working for a promoter in Boston, and we did the first 6 fish camping festivals, which were really the first real festivals that happened in North America. And I mention that because those festivals worked because they're artist-driven. The fish wanted what they wanted. They created things with crazy names, and they come to us, and our job as a promoter was to take the vision of the band and make it reality. Don't inflict what we know on them. Tell them, hey, you know, call shenanigans and bullshit when things can't happen. But basically, tell them what it would cost to make it happen. Fish would want a giant elephant the size of the room to come to life and walk out of the venue. We'd say, that cost $218,000. They'd say, we're going to spend that money because we gross $4 million. Right? So it's not at that level here yet. But the vision was like, how do we come back to Ithaca, and how do we do something for this town that means so much to us? How do we give back to the places that meant something to us as a kid? And Seth is like, we're going to do it for nothing. How about you? I'm like, well, hell yeah, man, why not? We don't need to make any money. Let's do this for the community. And it was branded at that
We're not
lunch.
making any money.
So much for the electric pachyderm, you know?
We'll see, maybe next year.
Oh, okay.
You know, it was branded the way it was for a reason. You know, Cayuga Sound, a festival for the city of Ithaca, curated by ex-ambassadors. The bands on this bill, they wanted them. They gave us a list, we went out and got them. The not-for-profits, they chose them. They all have a special meaning to them for some reason. And they mean something to us too, but I mean, I'm glad you did it that way, you know, and that's how this thing was born, and that's how it came together. And that's why my team's over in the park sweating it out now with passion, because we're doing something for an amazing amount of organizations in our town.
Yeah. These photos up here, that's, you know, Sam and Casey and Adam, who's not here right now, and Dan at the State Theater. The bottom right, you have Dan and his 9-year-old son, who are handing out flyers for this festival at Madison Square Garden show this summer to try to convince people to come down here. So, you know, we've been trying to get people here, so it's awesome that you're all.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, so just right down the street there, it's CSMA, which we are donating to, and where Casey
That's
and I...
Community School of Music and Arts.
Yeah, School of Music and Arts. I took saxophone lessons there. I took piano lessons there.
You learned the Lindy Hop, you were
I
saying?
learned how to swing dance there. Casey took piano lessons there. Like, you know, we're able to feed. We're giving money to Vitamin L. Jan and Janice are here. I was part of Vitamin L. That was so important to us. And it's just so great to be able to give back to the community that you know, nurtured us and brought us up.
If only they came to all those shows early on.
Oh yeah, shots fired. All right. So
I'm saying it for you, baby.
So let's talk here about there was a, you know, everything about this festival. There's a reason. So we brought the Roots to co-headline this thing. You know, they're a very important band to ex-ambassadors. I'm from Philadelphia, and I worshipped the Roots. So, here's 2 photos of the guys playing with the Roots at South by Southwest 2 years ago. And that was the night they met, where I think I actually went to the sound check, and Questlove was playing drums and Black Thought was, doing his thing, and then Sam would turn around and say to the Roots, like, all right guys, why don't you do this or do this, and be very confident and cool, and then would turn back to where the audience was, where I was standing during sound check, and would go, I think I was standing on the gate just going like this, and then at one point I think Adam went like, Seth, be cool. So just talk about why we brought the Roots and what you guys are looking forward to.
Well, why wouldn't you bring that?
Seriously,
I loved and also worshipped the Roots when I was a kid, when I was growing up here. When I was, I think, 13 years old, I saw them play at Bailey Hall. Was it Bailey Hall?
Bailey's a small one, yeah.
At Bailey Hall, Cornell, and at the time, this was just after Things Fall Apart came out, which is one of my favorite records of all time. They were so cool because, again, I was at a point where I was making rock music with my band. I just started to do that. But I had just like this deep love and passion for hip-hop and for rap music. Like, I studied these guys, like, for real, like KRS-One, The Roots, obviously, I like Nas, Biggie, Tupac, Big Pun, Big L, like these guys, the Fugees, like I Lauryn Hill, like I worshipped these hip hop and R&B artists, and what was so cool about the Roots is that they were making hip hop music, but they were a band, right? So there's this genre blend happening, and that really got to me.
That's super unique. I feel like I can't really think of any other act that does that.
Yeah, they're very much one of a kind, and the world knows that now too. And when we did this thing with them at South by Southwest, it was really an incredible moment for me of things coming full circle. I mean, we had just the year before played the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And they are the host band on that, so we got to quickly interact with them. But to be on stage, having them play songs that we wrote. We did Renegades, Jungle, and then we did...
Bring It On Home to Me.
Yeah, we did Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke. And that was brought down the house. It was like really... we killed it. We did a great job. We did a great job that night. And I guess the Roots thought so too. I could watch them. I mean, that picture, they're like watching Casey and just listening to Casey. I remember, I'm blanking on the keyboard player's name. What's it?
James Poisoner.
Yeah, James Poisoner. So James Poisoner is watching Casey, and this was during sound check. Casey's like riffing and doing his thing and being incredible, and they're both like just kind of looking at him. Like, damn.
And Questlove, a lot of pressure there. I had to try my best.
Everyone in the band is like looking over at Casey and like hearing what he's playing, and then like looking over to Questlove, and Questlove's like, yeah.
He's like the ultimate. He's like the mastermind sitting up there. He's sits behind the kid and he's got his little headset on so he can talk to the whole band while we're playing. And we'll be playing, say Jungle or something. He'll go towards the end. He'll go, okay, give me 4 hits, and the band just completely synchronous. Just perfect. We'll drop 4 hits, and then he'll say, okay, slow down and end it. And like clockwork, it's amazing. It's like. Yeah. It's like watching on like a master painter at work or something like that. It's incredible, yeah.
And so we did that show with them, and then they invited us to play the Roots Picnic, which is their festival that they put on.
I think it was the first time they were doing it in
New York. The first time they were doing it in New York, yeah. So they usually put it on in Philly, and this was the first year they were doing it in Philly and in New York, in Bryant Park. Yeah. And they asked us to play. I mean, that just like takes things to a whole other level, because not only have we had these interactions with them, It's South by Southwest is kind of just a shit show. It's like so chaotic, like you can never tell if like anything was put together by whoever, this could have been just a blind date, I don't think they requested us to play with it that night. But it happened and we did a great job and they were like, these guys are really good. Why don't they play our festival?
So we earned our way onto that side.
Yeah, it really was them being impressed. I think that was on Saturday, and on Monday I got, and usually these are emails actually, but I got a phone call from, weirdly, a promoter from Philly who I used to work for at World Cafe Live in Philly, and she called me and was like, she goes, what do ex-ambassadors have to do with the Roots? And I go, they played with them on Saturday, and she was like, oh, well, their manager called me and said we have to put them on the Roots Picnic, so do they want to play the Roots Picnic? And I was like, wow, that's incredible. So they, you guys made an impression, and the Roots personally went, come do this. So, we asked them, okay, return the favor, come to Ithaca. We're getting close for time, so I want to open it up to questions.
This is also a picture from a campaign we did with a group called No Barriers. They put on this yearly summit in Lake Tahoe for people with disabilities and their families and friends. Everyone comes together, and there's mountain biking, there's mountain hiking, there's all these athletic activities, and there's photography. Lauren taught a photography class. There's yoga, and it's accessible for everyone. And we created the Renegade Fund with No Barriers, which raises money for people who are unable to afford to fly themselves out to Lake Tahoe to be a part of this summit, to raise money for them to be able to come out.
Yeah, let's see. I might have more photos, so thank you for that. So, all right, I think we'll open it up for a handful of questions if anyone's got one. No? Yeah.
Yes. Did we answer all your questions? Dude, I'm proud of us.
So for Sam, I know that during your shows, or at least the ones I've been to, you like to take a minute and talk about equality and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you always do that even when you guys weren't as well known and here in Ithaca, or did you wait until you were more established as a band and had a platform and you knew you were talking speaking to more people?
So the question for people who couldn't hear it was about, before Renegades, I usually give a little spiel about human rights and about equal rights, and how that song kind of speaks to celebrating being different and embracing our differences. And you know what, the thing is, when we started to gain popularity and notoriety, we definitely made a conscious decision not to ever censor our beliefs. And I'm not even going to say political beliefs, because I think that's stupid to equate human rights with politics. We have always been vocal about it, and I think that we made the active choice, becoming more involved in politics ourselves and just the world in general. We saw that there was some apprehension with certain artists and certain public figures to be vocal about something as simple as equal rights, or pointing out and calling out injustices in the world. And that's just not something that we were raised to do. If I see something unfair, unjust happening to someone, I'm going to say something about it, and so will Casey. I think that's always been a big part of who we are as people. So once our faces became more visible, and once we became people that other people knew, we wanted to make sure that everyone understood that is something that we stand for.
I have to admit, though, to add to that, we did sort of, to be totally honest, after the election, we really sort of have taken it to the next level as much as we can, though, and as far as trying to now, fight for human rights and for equality and, everything that everything that the current administration stands against, basically. And you know, we've always been politically active, you know, active like Sam said, but we are definitely, you know, we see how much, you know, further we, you know, as a country and as, you know, a culture need to go. And so, you know, we're trying our best to you know, push everyone in that direction, in the right direction.
And we say it at our shows because our shows are a safe space for everybody.
Exactly.
For everybody, no matter what. And that needs to be very, very clear at our shows. So that's why we say
That's
it.
great. Congrats on that. There was a lot of discussion about that in this earlier panel this morning, which we're going to post online later, so you should go back and listen to that. There's a lot of discussion about how to choose when it matters and when you reached a level where you can actually say something and people give a shit about what you're saying, you know? And it's got to be, I mean, these guys, I'm sure were doing it all along, but there became a tipping point where people were paying attention and fans are hearing it and it grows from there.
Will your mom join you on stage tomorrow?
Mom's like, no! Do you want me? We'll figure something out. Mom, she's feeling a little sick right now, so I think she's gonna. Next year, though, we're gonna do a whole set. It'll be an hour and a half.
She's headlining the horn.
Love you, Mom.
We'll do that one at the Hangar Theater.
Yeah. Oh, we got to actually. That's the thing.
Moms and sons.
Any other questions?
How did you decide what local acts you wanted to feature at the event?
Well, you know, we kind of, honestly, I knew, I went to high school with a girl named Anungo, and Samus, yeah, she is so good, and I became a fan of her music before I like recognized her, and I was like, oh my god, we went to Scott, before I saw like any of her videos, I knew her music, and then I like watched the video for 1080p, her song 1080p, and she blew my mind. And I was like, oh my god, that's Anungo! We went to high school together. So she was the one person that I knew. And everyone else we kind of deferred to Dan, because Dan has been so active with Ithaca Underground and booking music locally. But we got some incredible acts.
I sent a list of 15 or 20 local acts, and these guys decided the ones that would round out the bill in the way that they wanted it to sound. You know, so we kind of worked together. I picked the ones that I thought would resonate with the way the lineup was coming together, and these guys picked. Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was a really hard thing. I mean.
And they're all so great. They're all so great. I mean, I've listened to Stone Cold Miracle now, and Is He True is so cool, so good. You know, like it's very exciting for us.
And then that's why also, you know, it was hard to choose, so we went, all right, let's just add as much as we can. So we put the blind spots on for the pre-party tonight at the Hahn. We have the other pre-party happening at the Dock with, I don't know, 6 bands from Ithaca.
Yeah, we gave the Dock to Ithaca Underground, which is another amazing organization that's benefiting from this. I want to give them a major shout out as always. They don't, you know, this is a town where lots of promoters can get along, you know, and I couldn't exist without them, and they couldn't exist without the Next Level either, you know. It makes the bands want to come play here. There was an article in the New York Times a couple Sundays ago about all these amazing, you know, women of rock, I think they called it, but it was more about, you know, transgender and all kind. It was just amazing how many of those acts that between DSP and Ithaca Underground have already played or are coming to play Ithaca, and it was just, it was like the realization of what that organization is about. So they've got 6 or 8 bands playing over at the Dock tonight, so go check that out. You know, it's going to be amazing. They're starting at 7 o'clock.
Seriously, I'm stoked on that. That's actually going to be amazing.
I think we have time for one more.
Could you talk just a little bit about the evolution of your songwriting process and what you think has kind of led to it reaching a mass audience?
Well, that's a great question. So the question is about songwriting and the progression of our songwriting. Yeah, I mean, so I think a big part of I talk about this a lot in interviews about how growing up in a small town, I think, really influenced our music because we, you know, look, I was like most kids when I was growing up here, I wanted to get the fuck out. I wanted to leave, like, ASAP. I did, it's true. And
That's a story of every kid growing up in a small town.
And that drove me to write big songs and with big themes that reached out very, very far. So that, and I always think about that, and that's part of the reason why I love coming back here, because this town, this city reminds me of that feeling of just like yearning and reaching for something greater than and bigger than myself at the time. So that was kind of the impetus for everything. And then in terms of our writing, it's been an incredible experience to watch us, kind of as objectively as possible, to watch us grow as songwriters. We started off as any other band, we would write songs together in a room, and everyone was playing something different on their instrument all at once, and it was absolute chaos, and I had to through it all, try and listen for something. Like Casey would play a riff, and I would say, hold on, that's really cool. Like, what are those chords? Can we just play that on loop for a minute? And the loop would last for maybe 30 seconds, and then it was back to just utter chaos. And that's how we operated for a while. And then it kind of transformed into each of us going off onto as digital recording became more and more accessible and more and more professional quality. We started recording stuff on our own and really learning how to do that. And that allowed us to each kind of go into our own world privately and create something, and then bring it to the collective. I think for me as a songwriter, the biggest thing for me and the most important thing was the early stages right after we signed our record deal, where I just was constantly writing. Our producer at the time, he was all about quantity over quality, really. Just write. You gotta write every day.
approach to writing music, pretty much.
Yeah, and quality will come out of that quantity, but for me, it was just about doing it all the time, wherever and whenever I could, even if I didn't come up with anything, just to do it.
Well, it's like working out. Songwriting is like working out, or any sort of activity where the more you do it, the better you get at it. I feel like.
Yeah, and that repetition.
10,000 hours thing.
Yeah, that repetition was amazing for me, and now it's a part of how I operate. With my creativity, just banging my head against the wall for hours and hours and hours until something happens.
It seems there are a lot of songs in your history that started with unconsolable.
Right.
What came in between? Unsteady.
It was just unconsolable and unsteady are the two ones.
At least you're not unhappy.
No, I'm not unhappy. I had to throw a dad joke in there. Oh my god.
Good one, Dan. All right, so thank you guys. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you guys for having us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys all for being here. We hope to see you on Saturday.